Welcome back to Tomorrow Unveiled. If you're anything like us, you're probably looking ahead, wondering what's next. And honestly, nowhere does the future seem to be arriving faster than in longevity science. We're talking about a potential future where living longer, yes, but also living healthier, more vibrantly for longer. Well, it's shifting from sci-fi to something tangible. The pace is just incredible. And that's exactly what we're diving into today on Tomorrow Unveiled. We're calling this one the Immortality Update, this week in longevity breakthroughs. Our mission here is simple. Sift through all the latest research, find those key nuggets, and basically give you the inside track on where this field is heading. And the real focus, extending health span. Because let's be honest, what's the good of extra years without the health to enjoy them?
That's absolutely right. And what we've seen recently really highlights a major shift in geroscience, the study of aging itself. We're going to unpack, I think, three really critical areas today. First, a big recalibration in terms of drugs, which ones are really living up to the hype. Second, some revolutionary new technologies, tools that are changing how we even measure aging, right down to the cellular level. And finally, we have to talk about the ethics, the practical side of all this rapid progress, because, well, it raises some big questions.
Okay, sounds like quite the overview. Let's start with that first point, the great recalibration in longevity drugs. For ages, it seems, the goal has been finding something that mimics calorie restriction, right? Like all the benefits without the constant hunger. And it sounds like some new analysis has shaken things up quite a bit for a couple of the big contenders.
Oh, definitely a shakeup. Our dedicated research team pulled together this huge meta-analysis. We're talking 167 studies across 8 different vertebrate species, fish, mice, even monkeys. Really comprehensive stuff. And the results were, well, pretty definitive. Rapamycin came out looking like a star performer, a premier caloric restriction mimetic, as they say. It consistently extended lifespan across all of these different species, comparable to actual dietary restriction. And it does this mainly by inhibiting the mTOR pathway. Think of mTOR as a kind of master switch for cell growth and metabolism.
Okay, so dialing down mTOR tricks the cells into a kind of survival mode that promotes longevity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It simulates that state of nutrient scarcity. Now, contrast that with metformin. Metformin had a lot of buzz, huge anticipation, big human trials underway for anti-aging specifically. But this broad analysis, it just didn't show significant or consistent lifespan extension across the board. Now, don't get me wrong, metformin is a fantastic drug for type 2 diabetes, for metabolic health. Absolutely. But as a general anti-aging candidate for healthy people, this research raises some pretty serious questions. It forces a rethink.
That metformin rapamycin finding is a real eye-opener, a definite shift.
Yep.
But sticking with rapamycin, okay, it sounds great in theory, but it's got a reputation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The safety aspect feels like, well, walking a tightrope.
That's the crucial balancing act, absolutely. Rapamycin isn't Tylenol. At higher doses, the doses used, for instance, to prevent organ transplant rejection, it's a powerful immunosuppressant. And that comes with potential side effects, serious ones. Metabolic issues like glucose intolerance, problems with wound healing, effects on blood counts. Even at the lower doses being discussed for longevity, that immunosuppressant quality is still there. So the bottom line is we desperately need rigorous, long-term, placebo-controlled human trials. We have to figure out safe, effective dosing specifically for healthy aging, which is why, unregulated off-label use is something experts really caution against. The potential is huge, but the risks are real. We need the data.
So proper trials are key for rapamycin. But the field isn't just waiting around. There's another really hot area tackling these so-called zombie cells. What exactly are senescent cells and why are they such a problem? Are they really shuffling around groaning?
Not quite shuffling, no. But zombie cells is actually a pretty good nickname. Senescent cells are basically cells that have stopped dividing. They're irreversibly arrested. But, and this is the key problem, they don't die off cleanly. They stick around, metabolically active, and they spew out this cocktail of inflammatory molecules. It's called the SAP senescence-associated secretory phenotype.
SAP.
Think of it like these zombie cells constantly sending out danger signals, inflaming and damaging the healthy tissue around them. They actively contribute to aging and many age-related diseases. So the big breakthrough here is the development of what are being called precision senolytics. The research team developed a new drug candidate that's designed to specifically target and eliminate harmful senescent cells, in this case, in the liver. It works by triggering the degradation of key proteins, BCL-XL and BCL2, which act like survival switches for these senescent cells. Flip those switches off, the cell dies.
Ah, so it takes out the bad guys without hitting the good ones.
Exactly. It's much more targeted than earlier Senolytics, which means potentially fewer side effects. And in animal models, this approach looked much safer and showed real functional benefits, reduced liver fibrosis, even inhibiting liver cancer development.
That's incredibly clever. And haven't we seen some early human data too? Something about dasatinib plus quercetin, D plus Q.
Yes, that's right. An earlier human trial with that D plus Q combination did show some modest benefits, things like improved bone formation. But what was really interesting, I think, was that the benefits seemed strongest in people who started with a higher burden of senescent cells.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a magic bullet for everyone.
Precisely. It really highlights that these might not be one-size-fits-all treatments. And it underscores the need for better biomarkers, ways to measure who actually has a high senescent cell load and would benefit most. It pushes us towards more personalized approaches.
Which leads us perfectly into the next area, the tools. Measuring aging itself. Because telling someone their biological age used to be pretty fuzzy. Right now, it sounds like we're getting way more precise.
Oh, it's a whole new ballgame. We're entering the era of spatial geromics. Our research team at Stanford developed these incredible spatial aging clocks. Forget getting a single number for your whole body. These clocks use something called spatial transcriptomics, mapping gene activity exactly where it happens in a tissue combined with machine learning. The result: they can measure biological age cell by individual cell while knowing its exact location within the tissue. It's like having a high-resolution age map of your organs. A huge leap forward.
Wow, age map.
And that spatial information immediately revealed something critical. A cell's neighborhood really matters for how it ages. For instance, in the brain tissue they studied, immune cells moving in seemed to accelerate aging in the cells nearby. They had this pro-aging effect.
Really?
Yeah, but conversely, neural stem cells, the kind you find in regenerative areas, seem to have a local rejuvenating effect on their neighbors. Your cellular environment is a huge factor.
Okay, that's fascinating science, but what's the practical payoff? This sounds almost like science fiction.
The implications are massive for drug development. Imagine using these spatial clocks as clinical endpoints. Instead of waiting years, maybe decades, to see if an anti-aging drug extends lifespan in humans, you could potentially measure, maybe in months, if it's reversing the biological age of specific cells in a target tissue.
Ah, I see. So it could dramatically speed up testing and validation.
Exactly. It could cut down that validation time hugely, making it faster and cheaper to figure out which drugs actually work. It's like getting near instant feedback. And then there's an even more fundamental approach, actually reprogramming our genetics. A study from the research team at UC San Diego did something pretty amazing in yeast cells. They managed an 82% increase in replicative lifespan. That's how many times a yeast cell can divide before it, stops. Basically extending its youthfulness.
82%, huh?
They genetically rewired what they called a binary switch. It involved dynamically modulating two key aging pathways, one related to sirtuins, SIR2, and the other to PGC1, HAP4. Think of it less like pushing one button harder and more like subtly adjusting two volume knobs over time in a coordinated way. A dynamic dance.
That idea of dynamic modulation, it feels like a completely different way to think about therapy, doesn't it? Not just on or off, but this continuous adjustment.
It really is. And the exciting part is that these regulators, sirtuins and PGC1, have direct counterparts in humans. So the long-term potential for translating this kind of dynamic approach to us, well, it's immense, a whole new therapeutic concept.
Okay, so we have refined drugs, precision senolytics, incredible measurement tools, even genetic reprogramming. How is technology helping pull all this together? I hear a lot about AI in drug discovery.
AI is becoming absolutely central. Generative AI, multimodal AI, these tools are being used to design completely new drug candidates from scratch. They can analyze massive biological data sets, spotting patterns humans would miss, predicting which molecules are most likely to work. It's shifting drug discovery from, laborious trial and error
To more like compute and test.
Precisely. Design it intelligently with AI, then test the most promising candidates. It accelerates everything. And another game changer is the rise of human-organoid platforms. Companies like Parallel Bio, for example, are creating what are essentially immune systems in a dish. These are miniature 3D human tissue models that can mimic complex biological responses like immune reactions. So you can test drugs on actual human-derived tissues before they ever go into a person.
Instead of relying solely on animal models?
Exactly. And considering something like 95% of drugs that look promising in mice end up failing in human trials, this human-first approach using organoids could be revolutionary. It could potentially save years of development time, billions of dollars, and frankly, be much more ethical than current animal testing models. Faster, cheaper, more reliable, more ethical. It ticks a lot of boxes.
That really does sound like a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Okay, a quick pause here. If you're listening on a service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be so grateful if you could spare a moment to leave a rating and review for Tomorrow Unveiled. It honestly makes a big difference in helping others find us. Thanks so much.
All right, so we've covered some mind-blowing science. But with such rapid progress, there are always hurdles, ethical questions, practical challenges. We can't just focus on the lab bench, right?
Absolutely not. And one of the biggest concerns is what some are calling the equity imperative. There's a very real danger of longevity gentrification.
Meaning only the rich get to live longer, healthier lives. That's the risk, yes. Look at some of the advanced diagnostics already available, comprehensive biomarker panels looking at your genes, proteins, metabolites, or advanced genetic screening. They can be incredibly expensive, often not covered by insurance. If these cutting-edge longevity interventions follow the same path, we could easily end up in a situation where wealth dictates health span, widening existing health disparities dramatically.
That's a deeply concerning prospect.
It really is. That's why there's an urgent need to think about access and affordability right from the start, during the research and development phase. The goal has to be making healthy longevity accessible to everyone, not just a luxury item.
A critical point. And beyond equity, there's also a big practical hurdle the whole field faces dealing with the regulators, a kind of regulatory bottleneck.
That's a good way to put it. It's almost ironic given how fast the science is moving. One of the biggest practical challenges is that aging itself isn't officially recognized as a disease by agencies like the FDA in the US.
So you can't run a clinical trial with the goal of simply slowing aging.
Not directly, no. Companies have to design trials to target specific age-related diseases like osteoporosis, heart disease, Alzheimer's, even if their drug might have broader anti-aging benefits.
That must slow things down considerably.
It does. It limits the scope, makes trials more complex and expensive. It forces researchers to find workarounds. This is where validating those aging biomarkers we talked about becomes so crucial. If we can get regulators to accept certain biomarkers, like maybe those spatial aging clocks, as reliable surrogate endpoints.
Meaning changes in the biomarker reliably predict future health outcomes.
Exactly. If you can show your drug improves a validated biomarker significantly in, say, 6 months or a year, maybe you could get approval for an aging-related indication without waiting 20 years for actual lifespan data. These biomarkers could be the key to unlocking that regulatory bottleneck.
So it all ties together: the tools, the therapies, the regulation. But underlying all of this, the core philosophy isn't just about adding years, is it? It's about the quality of those years.
That's the fundamental principle. The goal is extending health span, making sure those extra years are years of good health, maintained function, sharp cognition, resilience. It's about compressing morbidity, squeezing that period of ill health and decline into the very shortest possible time at the end of life, living well for longer.
Right.
And that creates what economists call a longevity dividend. It's not just good for individuals, it's incredibly beneficial for society. Think about the wisdom, the experience, the productivity we gain if people remain healthy and engaged for decades longer. Aging shifts from being seen as a burden to a potential asset.
A really powerful way to frame it. And for those of you watching on YouTube, if this discussion is sparking ideas, please do take a second to like this video, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future explorations. Looking back at everything we've covered, it feels like there's been this massive shift from sort of blunt instruments to highly targeted scalpels, from a fuzzy picture of aging to this incredibly high-resolution view.
That's a great summary. We're moving away from one-size-fits-all approaches. The future really seems to lie in a deeply personalized, systems-level strategy. I envision a future where these sophisticated AI-driven diagnostics, maybe using spatial data, create a dynamic, real-time map of your specific aging processes. And then we use a whole toolkit of targeted interventions, drugs, maybe senolytics, perhaps even reprogramming techniques tailored specifically to what your body needs at that moment.
Personalized, dynamic, precise, it sounds incredible.
Right.
Which brings us to a final thought, really, for you listening. If we do achieve this, if we can significantly extend our healthy years, push back disease, how does that change everything? Think about it: societal norms, careers, retirement, relationships, even how we define a full life. What does your potentially longer, healthier future look like? What choices might you make? We genuinely love hearing your perspectives on these big questions. So whether you're on YouTube or your podcast app, drop us a comment. Let us know what you think about this Immortality update. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tomorrow Unveiled. We'll be back soon to unveil more of the future.